guitar enthusiasts, in this video we're going to be answering the age-old question of how do I play the guitar without looking at it? Meaning, how do I play chords or how do I move around the fretboard without having to look at the fretboard? Or how do I strum or pick individual notes on my guitar without needing to look at the strings? And we're going to talk about that step by step here in two parts. We're going to talk about the body of the guitar, so your strumming and picking hand, and then we're going to talk about the fretting hand. So what I'm going to show you here is a very, very simple exercise. It's one of the first exercises I show people in my 7-level guitar system because I believe it's very important for you to start understanding the distance between the strings, just in case you want to play songs that use a pick. For example, okay, you want to be able to move around that guitar without necessarily, having to keep your eyes on the strings all the time. So, step one, what do? So this is a string skipping exercise, and we're going to start on the thickest string on the top side of the guitar. This is your E string, known as your low E string. All right, and we're not going to do anything with our fretting hand. We're just going to focus on the picking hand. Now, this is very important because a lot of students, they focus on too many things at the same time. So right now, we just want to focus on our picking hand. So if you're right-handed, that's going to be your right hand. And if you're playing as a lefty, that's going to be your left hand. But the exercise is still the same. So we have 6 strings. Okay, we have our low E, then we have our A string, D string, G string, B string, and then we have our high E string. And what we're going to do is we're just going to work top to bottom. So let's take this from the low E string, okay, the thick string on the top side of your guitar, and we're going to go from E to A, okay, then it's going to come back to E, and we're going to go to D, then E to G, then E to B, then E to E. Now that might be very hard for you to do without looking, like I can do. So to start, what I want you to do is I do want you to look at the strings. Now a lot of my students in the beginning, they play the guitar angled so that they can see the strings. That's okay, but it's going to cause some issues on the fretting hand for you. So my recommendation is to straighten out the guitar as best you can and then look down the fret, like look over the guitar to see your strings. But first, I want you to look. Let's do the exercise looking. So you're going to go E to A, E to D, E to G, E to B, E to E. Okay, let's do it again. And we have to go slower, that's okay. E to A and E to D, E to G and E to B, then E to E, okay? And I would just do that over and over again until eventually you do it all the way through without looking. And you're gonna know, this is actually a good ear training because you'll start to learn the sound. So if you miss the wrong string, you're like, oh, that's not what I was expecting next. You'll be able to fix it. You'll be able to hear that you're not playing the right string. So again, one more time, looking at the strings, and then we're going to try it without looking at the strings. So we're going to go E to A, E to D, E to G, E to B, E to E. Great. Now try to do it without looking at the strings. Just go very slow. So we have E to A to E to D to E to G to E to B to E to E. And that's all you're going to do for the first part, okay? But that's not it. There's another way. We're going to now do this backwards, the opposite way. So we're going to go from high E to B, high E to G, high E to D, high E to A, high E to E, okay? So same thing, same process. We're going to go E to B, E to G, E to D, E to A, E to E. Okay, and repeat that a number of times. Let's go one more time looking at the strings. Ready? And E to B, E to G, E to D, E to A, E to E. Okay, And that's the exercise. Then you would take your eyes off the guitar and you would play it. Okay, you would play it without looking at the strings. Now, this is not going to happen overnight, all right? I would just practice this for a few minutes a day for probably a week or two, and you're gonna be surprised at how quickly you put it together. But there's two elements. We need the visual element, so we want the eyes to help guide the hand in the beginning. And eventually what's gonna happen is your hand is going to develop a muscle memory for where the strings are and the distance between the strings, okay? And in my course, I obviously have a string skipping exercise too, which is more difficult than this, but this will at least get you started with getting familiar with where the strings are and the distances between them. Now, let's flip over to the fretting hand side, and the exercises work very much the same. First, we have to have the visual component. We need the eyes to guide us in the beginning. So a lot of students, they're, Lauren, how do I not look at the fretboard and play the guitar? So usually they're playing open chords, or maybe you're trying to do like a scale or something, and you got to look at the guitar to see the strings. So whether you're playing individual notes or whether you're playing a chord, it's essentially the same. Just what I said. You need to do enough repetition that this stuff becomes muscle memory. So let's work with open chords, since a lot of my students are, we strum songs, so we use a lot of open chords. So let's take something simple. Let's take an E minor chord, okay? And I'll use my easy C chord that I teach students in my course. Okay, so this way, we only have to really focus on moving one finger, less to think about, but we'll talk about what we're doing in the exercise here. So the first thing I would do is I'd find my E chord. Okay, you could just do it with one chord first. Okay, there's E chord. Release it, put it back, E chord, okay? Release the chord, put it back. All right, so again, we're just working on the muscle memory of getting the chord in the right spot. And then if you want, you can put a chord change to it. So E minor and C. Okay, great chord change, because just with these two chords, even if you use the easy versions of the chords, you could play a song like Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles, which is just two chords. Okay, so now I am watching where my finger's going. Okay, and I'm going to do this a number of times. You might want to do this 25, 50 times. And then what I'm going to do is say, okay, I'm going to look away from my guitar now. I'm going to look at the camera, and I'm just going to try and remember. And also, it's kind of an ear training exercise too, because if you hit the wrong string, watch, I'll hit the wrong string. Oh, it's gonna sound harsh if you hit the wrong string. So if you do that, stop playing, look at your fingers, fix them, and then go, maybe watch it a few more times. Okay, watch it a few more times, and then go back to not looking at the guitar. Okay, that's one exercise you could do. I'll go to full chords now, the full C and G, before people yell at me that that's not a real C chord. It is a real C chord. If you only play 4 strings, it is a C chord. All right, so let's go back to C and G. All right, I'm working on these chords. What I would do is we'll take G here, because a lot more people have an easier time with G than C. So I would play my G chord, and then I would lightly lift my fingers. You don't have to strum. I'm just strumming so you know I'm playing the chord correctly. But I would just lift my fingers. I'm barely lifting them. Okay, maybe a couple millimeters or 1/8 of an inch off the strings. And I'm just, because a lot of people, what's going to happen, especially with something like a C chord, you're going to take the fingers off. See, I can make a C chord in the air. I don't know if I'm holding that right for the camera. I can make a C chord in the air, but for the average beginner, the fingers are going to flatten. They're going to collapse because they don't have the muscle memory, and they, just don't have the strength maybe to do that. There is a strength component to playing the guitar, or the flexibility or the dexterity to maintain this position. Okay, it's kind of weird. Your hand's not used to doing that. So we want to, back to a C chord now, okay, just gently lift them, okay, and then I'll go back to G, and eventually I want to peel my fingers like completely off the guitar and bring them to the guitar. Now people ask me all the time, Lauren, are all your fingers hitting the guitar at the same time? They are not. On some chords, it's easier to do than others, but on my G chord, my 3rd finger tends to hit first, and the other 2, I can kind of get down simultaneously. But the goal is I'm trying to get these fingers to just hit the right strings. And then eventually I'm going to drop my hand down, bring it up to the guitar. Now, what you can do is you can do the same thing where you don't look at the guitar and you bring your hands and you play your chords, okay? And you switch around the guitar playing all kinds of different chords. A minor, maybe you're going to play some bar chords. Okay, we have G major, bar chord. So maybe you're going to start working your way around the neck of the guitar. The key is if you want to play the guitar without looking at it, you have to practice the guitar without looking at it. I tell my students all the time in my 7-level guitar system, like, you have to practice for the result you want. So if you're practicing to try and memorize a song, we have to practice not using the sheet music and trying to get our brain to remember what's on the sheet. Same thing with the picking hand or the fretting hand. If you want your hands to start remembering where this guitar is, the distance and the different spaces between the frets and the strings, you have to practice by taking your eyes off the guitar. Okay, so straighten out that guitar, stop tilting it, straighten it out, because the other downside, little extra note for you guys, if you tilt the guitar, it changes the angle at which you play your chords. So if a lot of you are suffering from muted chords, a lot of times it's because the guitar is not straight up and down. You've now changed the angle to the fretboard, and your hand is going to start muting the chords. And if you would like more advice on how to stop muting your guitar strings, you can go watch this video right over there where I'm going to show you some tips on how to fix that.